So in the same manifest directory, we have this dev and prod namespaces. Let's create the Nginx deployment. So the Nginx deployment is this one. API kind and metadata. We are creating an Nginx deployment. Here we are define a label. Okay, in template we define the label as app Nginx. For that Nginx means we are selecting that selector using selector match app nginx and create two replicas of it. Then again we have defined in the template itself the specification for the container, that create a container called nginx container. Okay, and use the image nginx latest. Okay. So we now will also create a cluster IP service and also node port service. In production environment we will create either one of those. Okay. But for demo purpose we are creating both. So the first service which is we are creating is the cluster IP service. Okay. So here we have defined the cluster IP, API version, kind, metadata. These are common fields. We are giving name to the service, that cluster IP. Okay. And this selector is nginx. The selector it is taking from the label we have defined here. Okay. And the ports it will be using port 80, and the cluster IP will be the type of the service which will create. Similarly, create a node port. So the node port will be this. Now again check if we have any deployment or service already created. We don't have anything, but we do have kubectl get namespaces. We have two namespaces. In this namespaces we'll be creating this nginx pods. Okay, but remember we are not doing the switch context and all like yesterday. We'll use a simple method, that is using -n. Just add -n kubectl get all -n dev. Okay, and prod. If you see, both the namespaces are empty, and we can also add this -n after kubectl command -n dev get all or prod. Okay, sometimes if you see, I'll be using after kubectl or after get all also. So there is nothing in both the namespaces dev and prod. So what we'll do is kubectl apply -f. Okay, so what is the name? Nginx deployment in dev. Okay, and in prod. Okay, so similarly in dev we will apply nginx cluster IP service. The same in the prod. Again for the node port we'll apply okay. So let's check the namespaces -n dev get all. Okay, so we have an deployment with two pods. So these two pods are running. We created a cluster IP service and a node port. Okay, and this will not interfere, or there is a logical separation with the prod. The prod also has the same thing, but with the different service IPs. Okay, so the two pods are running. Both the pods are having internally some IP addresses, and as the pod is ephemeral in nature, the IP address may change. That's why we have an extra layer of cluster IP and a node port. Okay, so if you see here, our configuration is done, and if you say we have to just copy paste it because this is already created. Okay, we don't even have to remember the commands. Just download it from any wiki or from a GitHub. Okay, and just do kubectl apply, and the configuration is done or the deployment is completed. Now if I do curl, I can see the cluster IP. As we are on the same cluster node, we can easily access the cluster IPs. Okay, but to access this node port, we'll have to use the IP address of the node, that is the worker node. And in this case, the worker node is this DevOps VM whose IP address is 192.168.1.11 and the node port. As we are using the same image everywhere, the output is almost similar. So for this also we can check 231 curl. Okay, and again I'm telling, yesterday also we explained it, that whenever we create a node port, you won't see here anywhere what is the IP of that node port. We have to assume, not assume it, we have to logically select the IP, that is the node port will be the node, that is the node is DevOps VM which has an IP address 1.11. So use its node port, where this is the one. Don't think this is the node port, this is the cluster IP. Call 192.168.1.11, and the node port is also accessible from the outside world, but in the same IP address range, that is 192.168. When I'm in the same range means I'm trying to access it from the laptop. Okay, and the laptop has IP address IP config 1.2. So from 1. Range it will be accessible. It will not be accessible from the internet. That means this 1.11 you all cannot access. For that we'll have to map it with the some other service called load balancer, and that also are useful mostly in the cloud. So this was all about the exercise for creating the manifest using